Hey everybody, Brandon Dawson here on the Dawson Show. I've got a good friend of mine, Buck Wise. I'm going to let him introduce himself and talk about his experiences, but I think this is going to be a fabulous show.
I'm super excited, but I do have to tell you, it's very odd for me to be sitting on sort of like the guest side of the mic, because obviously I've spent so many years in traditional broadcasts where I've been on TV or radio, and so it's funny, people don't realize that hosting a show, because you do the Dawson Show, that it's a different skill set, and being a guest to me is a different skill set.
Well, you can go to driver mode, dude, and you can.
You want me to?
We'll just throw it back and forth.
All right, it's now the Be Wise Show, not the Be. Where's the camera? Camera A?
Yeah, okay. Camera A right there. The Be Wise Show.
I love it.
Did we brand that yet?
Be Wise?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Buy that domain.
Honey, if you're watching, buy it quick.
No, we already got it. It's automatic. Siri does it for us.
Yeah, so, I'll give a quick explanation of my background, and it's interesting, eclectic, hybrid experiences in my life, but all things that I'm super passionate about and things that I love. Started when I was very young doing TV and radio, and what I was really doing is learning how to create content, compelling content, and connect with the community. And you don't realize when you're 16 years old and you just want to go on the air and be the famous guy in your city, that really it would be a lifelong experience of understanding marketing. And so that's what led me into my dream of owning my own agency, which is what I did for a few years before getting into the corporate space and starting to work for the world's largest agency. And so I now currently have a radio show still, which can be heard on the radio.com app, or if you're in the Portland, Vancouver area, such as Brandon, you can hear it on 105.1 The Buzz. And I do that from around the country. I syndicate from around the country because I have clients in an agency job that allows me to connect with different brands around the world and help them with their marketing. So,
and you work with big brands. Yeah.
Big brands, yeah. So, I mean, our partners are Salesforce, Adobe. We're working with SAP, but then our clients can be anywhere from currently, I'm working with people as big as Rolex and Starbucks and Adidas, or we might even work with local banks and financial institutions. So it varies, which is great, and which is what I've loved about the agency space, is that, because there's always this sort of, there's this misnomer that, working with brands can be rewarding if it's a brand you're super passionate about. The problem is that brands move slower than agencies. They pay more than most agencies, but you won't necessarily be as innovative or learn as much about different verticals and spaces. And so for me, it's been really cool to be able to work on so many different things and have such a wealth of knowledge and be able to dig in with the people who really have spent their whole life learning about these brands. So, I worked with PayPal for a little bit, and you get to learn a lot about tech, fintech, and you get these 101 crash courses where you get to pick up so many interesting things.
And you see brands when people are just conceiving them, and then they're kind of into it, and then all of a sudden, fast forward 10 years later, you're seeing them do the things that they dreamed of doing.
That's exactly it. Yep, you get to see a project all the way through, and so it's amazing. One of the projects I worked on was pumpkin spice latte, and so it's interesting to go and dive into who is a pumpkin spice latte drinker, and how do you reach this audience specifically, and you're involving so many people. That's the one thing I learned. So traditional broadcast, TV and radio, you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting yourself. And especially as we started to see digital dollars shift and go away from traditional and into digital. And obviously a lot of traditional companies, media companies, are still trying to invest in their digital platforms. So they still have some digital real estate. But what you're seeing is a lot of the ad and media dollars shift into digital, where places like where you would hear this podcast, or on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, you're seeing that a lot of these brands are really focused on big diversification of teams. You're seeing creative people, you're seeing planning people, and so on the traditional side, it's just me. It's a show. I've got a producer, and we're having to do a lot of that work on our own.
Yep.
And so I got into the agency space, and it was like, hey, I wrote this tweet for pumpkin spice latte, and they're like, no, we have a person who writes tweets. I was like, oh,
cool,
wow. And they're like,
mine's better though.
Yeah, exactly. They actually used it, which I was pretty excited about. But yeah, it's been interesting to follow, to your point, follow the journey and watch a lot of these things come to life. And it's something that you can be super proud about, you know.
Yeah.
One really cool thing that I got to work on was an Adidas beta project. And it was through Google, and it was working with the Google product team to create the first 360 banner ad. So, you know, banner ads are something that have been around for centuries.
Yep.
And Google was looking for a way to revolutionize it and make it more interesting and something more engaging. And so I can say this now because it launched, but we got to work privately on this. And, you know, it's the ability to come into your phone, to this device, see a shoe, like a running shoe. We used Alpha Bounce from Adidas. And you're able to take your finger on a banner ad and move the shoe left and right and look under it and look above it.
That's cool.
And that didn't exist, and so it was something that I got to from start to finish and watch it come to life. And
now everybody in the world's using it.
That's
It's like-
it. That's
it's
it.
like being able to see somebody have an idea and then work on it and see it happen and then see it go global.
That's exactly it.
You know, you talked about it's interesting because you talked about agency and you talked about writers and these big companies having their own writers, their own branding people, their own visual, you know, their logos and their looks and their feel and doing things like 360. Seeing all that and then grounding yourself where you have to do all that for your own show.
Yeah,
or
of
you
course.
have to do that for a certain client. The thing that I'm really intrigued about talking about, because one of the things that we're doing at Cardone Ventures is going after new concepts
Yep.
where they can innovate business spaces.
Yep.
But also your traditional bread and butter business that's in a micro market that's serving the community, who can't afford or have the vision to have technical writers and branders and
Right.
visual people. And so they don't incorporate that in their business. And then Bain Capital came out and brought in CEOs from the top companies in the world
Right.
at the beginning of this year, and they talked about the fact that the diversification between the huge digital brands,
Yep.
the Amazons, the Costco's, the Walmarts, things that incorporate digital with brick and mortar,
Right.
actually get like a 3 to 5 times impact in a micro market. So
Yeah.
if they have online stores, they have digital presence, and they have a brick and mortar. So you see a lot of these businesses going to both brick and mortar and online.
Yep.
Well, what they were saying in the micro markets, small markets where you have these independent businesses,
Right.
those businesses that are embracing those strategies, even if they're small, are way outperforming the traditional businesses that haven't yet embraced those strategies. And they
course.
predicted the next 5 to 10 years that those middle-tiered businesses that aren't embracing those strategies, aren't saturating their local market with online presence, will actually get decimated. And then
course.
that will create more growth for the people that are branding themselves.
100%.
I'd love to have you give us your wisdom on the importance or significance of learning. If you're a baby boomer, you've been in business for 10, 20, 30 years, you're a doctor, you're a chiropractor, you're a marketer, a retailer, a service provider, the absolute need to recognize you need to create a saturated presence and your value proposition starting now.
Of course. 100%. If you are not thinking about your digital real estate, you are going to be left behind. There's no doubt about it. And if it's not something that you're investing in, if it's not something that you've staked a claim or researched against your competitors, I mean, I'd say you have less time than what that study said. I would say you have less than 5 years, 4 years, you know, before digital becomes just as important as brick and mortar. And it depends obviously on what kind of business we're talking about. But, you know, I think for me, if we're talking small or medium-sized business, what I run into the most, because I've worked with both large clients and small clients, I think what I run into is that you go straight to tactic. You go straight to tactic without real strategy. And it's understanding the difference between what tactic and strategy is. And so you've got the youngest person in your business, and the youngest person in your business is saying, you need a Facebook page. And this is what a baby boomer who's trying to create their presence and connect with new consumers in their marketplace is doing. And they're going, you got it. Go, you do that. Create that, you know, and it's like last thing on their, it's a thing, and it's the last thing on their list. And that worked, by the way, 5 years ago. That worked to have your intern or your cousin who was on Facebook do that. But now it's getting too competitive, and it's a race to the bottom if that's your strategy. And so for me, it's really about research is key. So it's who's, and you can templatize this to a point, but then you have to get into specific verticals and talk about the business and your drivers and KPIs and all those things. But for me, it's, where is your audience? If they are a local audience, where's your audience? Digital and, brick and mortar. It's, who's your core audience? Can you subset your audience? Are there different levels of your audience? Is this your core consumer? Is this not your core consumer? And it's doing the research to understand what platforms they're on, and then which platforms have the best ROI for the type of investment that you're going to make. The other thing that's surprising to me is that people still think that social media is free, and it's just not.
Yep.
The garden walls of Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, you are paying. The organic reach is if you have no money whatsoever, you got to play the hashtag game. The organic reach is hard, and so to just start a Facebook page is not going to profit.
It's not going to drive you business. I mean, everything happens in increments, right? And
Yeah.
I talk about if my parents told me they were going to buy something and spend a significant amount of money,
Right.
and I'm their kid, the first thing I'm going to do is go Google who they're working with.
Yep.
I'm going to try to find their Instagram. I'm going to look at their Facebook. I'm going to see what the reviews are. So
Right.
there's some very basic stuff that if you're just not present there,
Very basic.
you're going to get crucified because I'm going to be like, this isn't even a real business.
Yeah.
Or they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So the perception that if you don't have that stuff, you're not even a legitimate business is becoming a serious implication in today's world.
It's a great point, and I would add to that, existing is important, to your point, but existing without engagement can actually have the reverse effect. Because now you've created this profile, you've created whatever, let's say, to use your example, you've created this Google listing, right? This is your business, this is whatever it is, and you're getting reviews and you're not replying, and they're bad reviews, or they're neutral reviews, or they're great reviews. And so many times I say, listen, if you're just gonna create this and walk away, it's not even worth it. Don't even create it. Because you've got to maintenance those relationships, because at the end of the day, that's what everyone's looking for, is that trusted relationship. And the other part of that I see is they'll create a Facebook or Google or whatever it is, and they get bad reviews, and they don't reply. They ignore the bad reviews. And so
Yeah, they just go bitch about them at home.
That's it.
But they don't reply to them.
Right, right. And to me, that's your number one fan.
Yeah.
Because that person was so passionate about their experience with you that they were willing to take time out of their day to talk to you about it. And so if you can convert a negative review, that person is more loyal than your number one customer.
Yep.
And so why wouldn't you spend more time on the negative reviews and do something special to win them over so that they're lifelong fans? But
And at the very least, do something to have the person go back on and post saying, "Thank you so much. You resolved this for me, and I really appreciate the follow-up."
that's exactly it. Yep.
Learn from it, and I 100% correct. And I think what we're trying to do at Cardone Ventures is bring this message to all these businesses who are doing well, but they're
Right.
not taking advantage of the market opportunity.
Right.
They're not well known. They're not, and Grant talks about this all the time. Better known will always be best.
Of course.
So if you were giving some guidance and advice to somebody who's sitting there going, "How do I become better known?" And it's funny. When I heard this, I was like, "This is so true." In the late 80s, when I moved to Atlanta and I became an outside sales rep,
Yeah.
I would literally get in my car and I'd drive, because there's no cell phones. You're still driving on atlases and maps.
Yeah, of course.
I would drive into a town.
I remember printing MapQuest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You drive into a town, you'd go to the phone book,
Yep.
you'd open it, you go to hearing care, and you'd rip the pages out, and
Yep.
whoever had the biggest ad would be the first person I'd call, because I figured they have the most money to spend for the big ad.
Of course.
But they may have been the smallest business. They
Yeah.
just were willing to spend more to have a bigger ad.
That's exactly it.
I don't think the world's changed.
No, perception is everything. Yeah, unfortunately that's the case. Perception is reality in so many cases. And so that's why I think it's important to exist, and it's important to put some time and detail into what you're doing and where you're doing it. So the other thing I like to talk about, not just the research. So you've researched, now you know your audience, now you know the platform. Okay, my audience is 25-year-old female. My 25, 35, there's your range. And they're on Instagram, and they're very creative, and they're aspirational, and they're all these things. So, okay, so you're going to get on Instagram. It's about putting the time and effort then into the data. So now you have to understand as you're growing and as you create your presence and you're creating your content, you have to understand the data behind that. So, I hear businesses all the time say, we had 60 likes on that last post. We killed it, or we had 1,000 whatever shares or 10 comments, and so we're doing great. Our social's awesome. We don't need Cardone Ventures. We're doing just great. We got we've got 10 comments, and what's the value of those 10 comments? You have to extrapolate the data. So it's what is the ROI of those comments, and how are you tracking that back to your revenue goals? You've got to be able to connect those dots. Otherwise, I think there's a between awareness and perception is reality. There is a point in the middle where you have to convert. So now you've got the big ad.
Yep.
They've ripped it out of the phone book.
Yep.
But if you're not converting because you don't understand the data behind that, then you've just wasted your time.
Or if the ad says we're friendly, we're timely, we're the best, we treat people like family,
right?
And you go, okay, and you call and they go, hold.
Yeah.
Or you walk in and they won't look you in the eye and they're, take a seat.
Yep.
Or you walk in and you're like, you advertise this merchandise.
Yeah.
Oh, we're out. We don't have any here.
Yeah.
That ad was from 2 months ago. Well,
Yeah.
you just posted it yesterday.
Yeah.
And to your point on Instagram, you might have 10 comments. Some might be cool. Another one might be tried it and it sucked.
Yeah.
Another one might be loved it. You need to figure out a strategy for each of those. Like, you can't just ignore them and go, oh, I got 10 comments. That's great.
Yep.
Because a lot of these business owners don't even read what people write or what they say. They just ignore it.
It's so true. Yeah, you have to maintenance those, and you have to put it into your business's biz dev strategy. So those are 10 people. Those are 10 potential customers or even current customers. And so how is it that you're able to take the potential customer and turn them into a customer, or the current customer and turn them into a bigger customer? It's interesting. So you've got research, you've got data, but it's like, what do you do with those things? And so the other piece of advice that I like to give is you have to quit being so afraid. You have to just test and learn, and do it in quick increments.
And cheap. Don't be cheap and don't
Right.
be afraid.
Right. That's exactly it. And so dive in. And, I like A/B testing. Come up with 2 ideas.
Well, and people, like, sometimes they get these negative comments and they get so focused on being defensive. Look, maybe the best ad you should run is, why does this such and such suck so bad?
That's exactly it.
If somebody says it sucks or it's no good, then you should run an ad saying, why is it so bad? And see how many people hit that.
Right.
Because you're just like making noise. You're trying to be information. You're trying to get get people's mind share.
That's exactly it.
You're not trying to get everybody to go, oh, I saw your ad, so I'm just going to go buy.
Right.
Like, I think there's kind of this delusional thing. Well, if I'm going to spend money in social media, I need to know exactly how many appointments and because you don't know until you build into momentum, and then something strikes, and then you sit back and go, wow, I got all these people that came in.
Yep.
Conversely, if you're running free ads and you're getting a lot of people coming in expecting free stuff from you, and then you're sitting back saying, nobody wants to spend with me.
Right.
It's because you're messaging.
It's your messaging. And I think also, to your point, to go back, it's your brand values. And if your brand values and your messaging don't align with what you're creating, then you're going to lose a customer every time. So you've got to be able to, and this is when I go back to strategy versus tactic. So you've got to have that strategy. What is your value? What is your messaging? Not just your messaging. What's your tone? How do you speak to them? What is your relationship to them? Are you close to them? Then your tone is this. If you're not close to them, your tone might be a little bit different. You really have to map this out, and you should create. It's crazy to me. I worked with the Detroit Tigers in Major League Baseball for 3 years when I was in Detroit with my wife. And this is a 160-year-old brand. And there wasn't a piece of paper. There wasn't a document
That said what they stood
that
for.
said, from a digital social standpoint, there was no digital social strategy whatsoever. And so, and that's why they hired me to come in and take that. And of course, now they've gone far beyond. Major League Baseball has invested. This was before Major League Baseball. They have a group called Advanced Media that now comes in and regulates a lot of digital and social for all of baseball. So it was a really cool opportunity for me to take something from scratch and be able to build something. And so you're talking about these fans are, current fans, or they're, they could be fans, or then you even break it down into, you have a whole Latin market that you're not even talking to. So we created a Spanish-speaking Twitter and an English-speaking Twitter. We did 2 Twitter strategies. It's like, you have to write all this down. You have to come up, and by the way, it could be wrong, because the other thing is, don't put this out on paper. Don't write this in a shared Google Doc and send it to your employees and then hang it on the wall. In 5 months, in 2 months, in 30 days, revisit it and change it and rewrite it based on what you're seeing. But get it wrong to get it right. That's sort of my strategy.
And I hear a lot of businesses say, well, I hired these companies and they came in and what they didn't work. And I think it goes to what you were saying earlier. There's a lot of really bad advice, and there's people that know if they just thrash around and make noise, they're going to do better than you doing nothing.
No doubt.
But it doesn't mean it's benefiting long-term your business. So how would somebody know if somebody really knew what they were talking about or something relative to helping them?
Boy, that's hard, because it's funny. I equated this to websites. Do you remember when it was really freaking hard to do a website?
Yeah.
You remember you had to have a guy.
Yeah.
You knew a guy, and he was a coder.
Yeah.
And he used Adobe Dreamweaver or some sort of program that none of us had time to figure out.
Yeah.
Then Squarespace came along. Now everybody's a website builder. Now everybody's an expert. Social media is the same. Social media marketing has, to me, and digital marketing has felt the same way. It's everyone's an expert, and it is really hard. What I would say is self-education is key. So if you haven't done your own research and you don't understand, you've got to do your own business strategy.
Yeah.
Before you hire. What that tells me is, if you've hired someone and you believe them and they don't deliver for you, you probably don't have your business strategy together.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's my guess. So, if you've understood who you're talking to, what platforms they're on, and what you need to be doing is getting to the point where you're hiring because you know what you want, not hiring because you don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, that's abdication is why these guys get in trouble. They hire people, they want the cheapest.
Right.
Then they hire people that come in that are slingers.
Yep.
And then they go out and spend money on things that don't work.
Exactly.
And then they say social media doesn't work.
Of course.
And they create the mindset that, and because they tried to do it all wrong from the first place.
Yep. And it's off their plate. That's the whole thing. I've got to run my business. That's off my plate. When it's the most important plate in your business.
Yeah.
So, research, data, understand the data, and optimize, constantly optimize. Those are like my 3 basics.
Strategy.
Yeah.
So you said strategy, then do the research.
Create the strategy.
Yeah.
Right.
Strategy, then do the
Research.
research, optimize your messaging.
Based on the data.
And then what was the 4th one? Or was the
That was, let's say strategy, research, data, data and optimize.
You need the data to
You need the
optimize.
data to optimize. Yeah,
Got
you have to spend some time with it. But yeah, I enjoy the process though of taking a business with a good foundation, because I know that I can put gas on that. I can fuel the success of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, dude. I like somebody, you go in that's like a service provider, has a great product.
Yep.
And you go in there and you experience it and you're like, I just don't get why everybody doesn't understand this and know about it. And then you put gasoline on their message.
Yes.
They already can deliver. And that's the sad part. There's so many businesses that actually do such a remarkable job at what it is what they do, and nobody knows they exist.
I know.
And they're confined by their boundaries. They say, oh, I'm a local market guy. The truth is, if you took whatever you're doing and put it online, you'd have people all around the world hitting it saying, hey, how can I order it? How do I get it?
There's a guy that cuts my hair. He comes to my house. And I tell him, I say, people are busy, right? The Ubers of everything. Every startup is the Uber of something, because nobody has time to go do the things they used to go do when they can Amazon delivers it faster and better. And so, I'm just using him as an example, and he's amazing. I mean, look at this hair.
Yeah, you look amazing.
He did it this morning. He came by at 7:00 this morning.
Wow. Every day he comes by?
He comes once a week. People ask me a lot, we're in the Northwest. I got to keep the hipster going.
It's not really fair, because the guy that can cut his hair every week has great hair. The guy that needs to grow his hair out for months to cover the spots that don't grow, it's just not fair.
That's not fair. Yeah. Well, listen, I'll get there. I'm sure I'll get there. But I pay him more because, I pay him less than what I'd pay if I went to the shop. But paying him directly, he makes more than being at the shop.
Yep.
Right? So it's great for both of us. But I think, God, it would be so easy if he could find a way to put his service online. There's a s'more shop in Portland. They're gourmet s'mores, and they're building their first brick. They're called 1927 S'mores Co., and they're building their first brick and mortar. And it's like it's an amazing experience because everybody's about experiences now, right? So that's really what these services are about now. Whether it's a product or a service, it's the experience that you're getting with it. So it's like, I fed my kids breakfast while I got a haircut. What a great experience that was.
Yeah.
You know, I want this gourmet log cabin, marshmallow, peanut butter, make your own, build your own s'more experience. And I see these businesses and I think, God, I would go like this, I would do that, and then I would go, okay, and I'm like, it pains me inside when I think about the opportunity that all these different types, whether you're, you know, your food and beverage or your automotive or whatever it is, the vertical that you're in, I'm just like, man, if I could only make that happen, you know? A good example is one of my buddies, Brian Benstock. He actually is one of the #1 car dealers in the country, and he found a way to put his service department fully operational in the middle of the night. And so when you, Brandon, need service on your car, at the end of your day, they come get it out of your driveway while you're sleeping.
Wow.
They service it, and in the morning, you didn't even know it left.
Yeah, why not? That actually makes all the sense to me in the world.
That's the experience. So it's all about finding those experiences and using your strategy and, you know, putting together a plan and creating this, you know, digital presence that nobody else has and sharing your message.
And people will pay more for that stuff.
No
for
doubt.
the convenience.
No doubt.
Absolutely.
No doubt. So I just love it. I love the business strategy. I love helping people connect with their consumers. But really, it's not just connecting, building the relationship, building
that's great.
that trusted relationship.
Well, you've got so much experience. Tell the listeners, share like one of the absolute most fun thing you've ever done in your career.
Gosh, most fun. Man, that's a great question. I always get asked, like, who's the best interviewer you've ever met, or who's the, you know, I've met every celebrity, I think, at this point. I've interviewed Jay-Z 3 times.
Wow.
You know, Beyonce twice. I mean, you name someone, I've probably interviewed them at this point.
And you've interviewed Natalie and I.
I mean, that's the best. That is the biggest and best guest I've ever had.
Yeah.
I have a photo of you guys. I've hung it on the wall. And I've
Right next
memorialized
to
it.
Jay-Z and
Yeah,
Beyonce.
Exactly. Yeah, a fun experience. You know, I get to travel the world. I get to. It's interesting because the interviews to me and the celebrities that I've met and talked to are exciting, but you've done it for so long. It just becomes a job at some point, unless there's one person you particularly enjoy or love. But I think for me, it's back to your point of taking something from scratch and building something, seeing it come to life, and knowing that your idea and all the hard work and time and effort you put into it made something, and it affected somebody, or it made someone feel something. And so, you know, these Google beta projects I get to work on, or you know, I get to fly to France every year and do the Cannes Lion strategy, and I get to, you know, I was on a yacht with Seacrest, you know, it's like all these little things are like the most amazing experiences.
And you realize in those moments, you look around and realize you're one of very few in the world that are there because of the significance and impact that you create from guidance, advice, wisdom, experience, things like that.
That's a really nice way to put it. I am super grateful and honored that I do get to be a part of that. But you just, you know, it's cause and effect. It's the same as you. You know, you had an idea, you built a company, and you created wealth and success and freedom for yourself. And so I think it's, you know, if you're on the right path and doing those things, you get to have those experiences. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so it's good to know. I knew at some point in my life,
Yes.
I just knew that I would be next to Jay-Z and Beyonce. I just didn't know it would be a picture on your wall.
3rd degree separation. You're right there, man. You're right
Closer.
there.
Well, thanks for joining me on the show, Buck.
Of course,
appreciate
man.
it. Yeah.
I appreciate it,
All right.
Brandon.
And thanks,
When do I
guys,
get to
for
come
listening.
back? Do I get to come back?
Absolutely. We'll have
Okay.
follow-up. In fact, if you have any questions for Buck, DM me on them or hit me up on the B. Dawson Show, and we will bring them back and ask some great questions. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, of
All right.
course. Thank you, man.